were ecom focused. Then we basically pivoted 3-4 months after that into SaaS. That was like April time. And then fast forward a year and a half after April, then we basically hit 1 mil ARR basically. And then after we went to like 2 mil, like 3-4 months basically after that. I know it's like very short. I'm going to give some answers. I don't think everyone will be the answers they're actually wishing for, to be truthful. Because I'm saying to myself, okay, I can hire another person ahead of time because I actually don't even pay myself. So it means I'm always one eye higher ahead. That also is a big competitive advantage because compared to having to sell 100 local SEO clients, I could just sell 10 SaaS clients and do the same revenue. We've always had the mindset of like an idea coming for a junior, coming for a senior is just as relevant as my idea, which means all ideas get shared, all ideas get implemented as well. You can't get to that side, or let's say continue growing, for example, at that pace, if you haven't fixed churn.
Jules Davies, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the Agency Growth Club. I think it's wild to see your journey. So I remember a few years back, we were at Brighton SEO and you were kind of in between freelancing and like we were talking about business and I knew you wanted to do big things. But fast forward to today, Scalerrs, which I feel like I see you guys everywhere all over LinkedIn, you and your team. You guys have scaled to, I think it was 1 million ARR in 3 years. And then in the space of like 3 months, you then hit 2 million ARR. Is that right?
Yeah, it's actually even a bit shorter than that. So when we caught up in Brighton, that was 223 basically. So what happened is that 223 till start of 224, I was still diddling around with the idea of doing an agency. And I officially started at start of 224 basically, and we were ecom focused. Then we basically pivoted 3-4 months after that into SaaS. That was like April time. And then fast forward a year and a half after April, then we basically hit 1 mil ARR basically. And then after we went to like 2 mil, like 3-4 months basically after that. In other words, like very shortly. In other words, yeah. So it's been a short period.
So with that growth, you should be hitting 10 million in the next 8 months, right?
I hope not. I really hope not, because that would be dreadful.
But let's dive into that, right? So for any agency owners that are listening, what have been kind of maybe the 2 or 3 non-negotiables that have helped you basically outpace the rest of the market? Because that's fast growth.
For sure. So I'm going to give some answers. I don't think everyone will be the answers they're actually wishing for, to be truthful. So obviously one thing, we're all going to be agree on that one, and my team can kind of vouch for that one, luckily. But like it's obviously workload, right? It's like if you work very quick in terms of like you work a lot and you try and get the right things out the door, you're obviously going to outpace a lot of people. So I try and tell the team like this little simple idea, but if you are taking a decision, like everyone has this mindset internally, which usually SaaS companies have, but it's like ship fast, right? So like for us in the context of an agency, it could be like operations in terms of like how we do stuff, or like an improvement on the service in terms of like a team member might have an idea and say, hey, we should change around this process. We should actually give this idea here to the client first. That way X team member on their team can start doing stuff. And then that way we get to prove impact faster. So an idea like that, maybe in a traditional team, it might take like a few weeks to get across the board. I'll say like, hey, how can we change that process today and make sure that next customer, we do it straight away. So I'd say the first thing is like how you install into the team the mindset of taking decisions in terms of the speed at which decisions should be basically implemented. And you're quite big on talent, right? And just hiring. So like we have like a page, right, in terms of like our values, etc. One of those values is like cut the fluff, move fast, in terms of like at the end of the day, so much stuff to do, try and get stuff done first. So I'd say that's the first element, that one. The next element I would say is going to be the idea of, and if you know a few friends, I mean, you actually know me pretty close, as you probably know this is true, but I didn't pay myself a lot to start with. Not to say anything, to be very frank, for a very long time. And that always enabled me to unfortunately take a lot of risk in terms of like saying to myself, okay, I can hire another person ahead of time because I actually don't even pay myself. So it means I'm always one eye higher ahead. So I got the liberty, or if you want to say the luxury, of affording a few hires, which would usually be offset a little bit later on because the founder is still paying himself quite a bit of money. So I said to myself, like, I'm not going to pay myself. I'm going to hire someone else before, because that way I'm always one hire ahead. So that's been one mindset. Also has helped out a lot. But I would also say, and unfortunately, this is probably not the answer a lot of people are not going to like, but not all agencies' services are equal in terms of like, luckily, I would say like us in SEO, first of all, the nature of SEO is a relatively sticky, high LTV service as a whole. Like you work with a lot of SEO agencies, like a lot of your customers are probably pretty healthy as a business. If you compare that to a cold outbound agency, I'm not saying cold outbound is not good, but by default, nature of the service is 6 months LTV industry average versus SEO, which is like 18 months. That's 3 times. That means you, just by default of what you offer as an agency, as a business, you're going to have to sign 3 times more clients and retain those customers 3 times longer compared to an SEO agency just does that by default. So that's one element. And next thing element as well is you probably have like other customers of yours that tie into this. It's like AOV in terms of like, we're in SaaS, we have lots of like, they can buy at higher price points, they can buy multiple services, and like that also is a big competitive advantage, because compared to having to sell 100 local SEO clients, I could just sell 10 SaaS clients and do the same revenue. So I think those are some ideas which I say maybe helped out probably to get here.
I love that. And on your first point about moving fast, so one of our core values is move at pace. And where I got that from was, I think it was Hormozy did a video about, you know, if they've got something really important and he tells the team, right, can we have this done? And they're like, yeah, let's say it's on a Monday. And they're like, yeah, we'll get it done by Friday. He's like, why? He's like, is this higher priority than everything else? Yes. Then why can it not be done at the end of the day? And it was all about like just switching that paradigm to, if we move fast, we can outpace most of our competitors night and day.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. It's like, you got to drill that into the team, and also hire more people who like to think like that as well. Cause like, yeah, that's also been a little bit of a hiring process as well, in terms of like, I don't have to say, but internally we had a joke about actually today, which we're kind of like anti-corporate, but like we work with like corporate clients, but like in hindsight, like everyone's kind of like, oh, why is there a stupid process of like going through loops? So like we try to like remove all those like, you know, red tape, etc. It's like there's like a flat also internally. I don't know how other businesses or agencies of our size would probably structure stuff, but we've always had the mindset of like an idea coming for a junior, coming for a senior is just as relevant as my idea, which means all ideas get shared, all ideas get implemented as well, which means you've got a lot of brains working collectively as well.
Yeah. And again, from a high level point of view, this isn't necessarily about everybody, but from agency to in-house, we find that agency people are like way more faster, able to deal with a load of clients. And they're up to speed with that. I'm not saying in-house brand side, nobody's like that, but I'd say quite a lot of them are used to, you know, literally what you said, sending off to C-suites and not hearing back for another month to 3 months on like if that's getting signed off or not.
Exactly, yeah. But it's also, well, I mean, that brings a broader question, I would say, as well, is like the responsibilities, or just like the environment you're in an agency, in terms of like just as an SEO or like a digital marketer, let's say, offering services, but like you're under so many kind of constraints. You know, the client can fire you at any given time. It's not like your internal is like, oh, we have another quarter review and see what happens, etc. It's like, this doesn't work out, like we're out the door, and it's like we've got to do well. So yeah, I definitely think, as you said, like agency talent usually they have, as a rule, they have to perform. They're put into more occasions to have to perform and level up. At the same time, though, there's definitely some amazing in-house people, but it's true. As an average, agency just pushes you. You don't have a choice, right?
And okay, so you went from million ARR to 2 million in, I think it was like 60 days or something wild, right? And I've seen, I mean, we've talked about it before, but I've seen you talk about it on LinkedIn as well, that like, it's not all daisies and flowers, like there was pain within that. So what were some of the things that did break during that sprint?
Yeah, 100%. Everything. No, I mean, but basically it's very interesting. And I'd say stuff is still breaking today, but 100%, like when you see these big growth curves of any kind of company, or just don't say to yourself like, this was easy. Like a lot of people like to portray that, for sure. Like definitely like far from easy. I would say like the first things that broke would be probably the operations internally, for sure, in terms of like overall just like how we're managing processes in terms of like workload between team members. Like we just realized like the model in terms of like how we were just allocating different people onto different tasks just wasn't working correctly. It also shows up very quickly in terms of, it's actually like that, how to say, 1 mil to 2 mil. There's different elements that come into the equation. One element is obviously like the workload in terms of how much there is to be done, but also the number of clients. And with the number of clients comes also the responsibility of overseeing those clients. And then also the perspective of like, well, because you got those new clients, you also got more team members. So it's probably that managerial kind of perspective which broke the most in hindsight, because for sure, operations in terms of how we're doing stuff, for managing a smaller number of clients, that was possible. And then after it starts to show up like, hey, this has flaws, but then especially the managerial perspective in terms of like, that was especially myself. In other words, like I have to have a grasp, usually being, I was like head of SEO, basically still kind of am. But like that starts to break when you have that person kind of overseeing. So I'd say the main thing that started to break at that stage there, yeah, ops, and then just like managing and overseeing and keeping stuff on track based from like a high level perspective, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Yeah. And so going to the 1 million to 2 million was, was that just a compound growth that happened, or was there a different strategy that brought you to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually one I've tried to analyze myself as well. So I think there's two things. One, yeah, you can't get to that side, or let's say continue growing, for example, at that pace, if you haven't fixed churn to start with. Okay. So because churn will very quickly catch you up, and that will kind of like keep like, as much as you will be investing into growth, it'll keep like churning and it'll keep leaking, and the bucket just won't scale, right? So luckily, I did do quite a bit of coaching. So with a good friend, for example, I don't know if you know, like Dylan over at Hey Digital. So he, for example, gave me a lot of his own processes internally in terms of how they used to actually scale and like their different client campaigns in terms of like client account management, just all their guidelines for Slack, etc. So a lot of those learnings, I managed to just get access to them straight away, which means by default, I'd say our retention was relatively strong to say, because we had a relatively strong process in terms of like a companion clients, weekly reports, monthly reports, communication guidelines, pre-formatted Slack messages. And also secondly, and so that was like the first thing, like we had a good infrastructure for churn, right? Next thing as well is like service quality. I had the mindset of investing the same way I said to you, like I invested like one higher up. I invested straight as well back into service quality, because in the back of my mind was always this idea that to grow at a certain point, we'll have to get access to better customers, and better customers will have bigger wants in terms of what they expect out of the service, what they expect out of our team, what they'll expect from like an ops perspective. So that was also a mindset saying to myself, like, hey, we don't have a choice. It's not a question of like, do I think that having a customer portal or stuff like this is fancy? It's a question that if you show up to an enterprise client, you say, hey, we're going to work on Google Sheets and a Notion board, he's going to be like, oh, that's interesting. And he's not going to like that. He's going to like, this isn't very well done, this process. But if you show up, you've got like, we have like a custom customer portal, which is like, like a custom SaaS app, basically like stuff like this. We knew that would allow us to get access to this next tier of customers. So I would say as well, like what also brought in that new part of growth was like a bigger tier of customers coming through the door who were willing to sign on. So that was a part of compounding and also investing into that service growth. So I would say there's a few elements, but like having on track churn, having on track investing into the service, all that compounds, which means when the right opportunity comes through time, you can actually grow with it, because you're not actually limited by all the other stuff you haven't done until then, basically. That's my perspective, at least.
Awesome. I love it. What's been the biggest like client acquisition portal for that?
Yeah, I mean, client acquisition for us has been mainly LinkedIn, I would say. Like, as you said, you see us quite a few parts. Like, LinkedIn has been pretty big. But at the same time, I would say a few other sources paid dividends. Like, we had quite a few referrals. We have had partnerships as well with like other sister agencies, which are like in similar verticals. But I wouldn't consider yet myself to be a beast on acquisition. I would say like, or like, I wouldn't say like we're very strong. I say we're getting stronger, but I wouldn't say like last year I would look at us and say, oh, comfortably, we did a very good job. I'd say like end of year, we're starting to do well, but like, yeah, LinkedIn, if that's an answer. But like, I wouldn't say like, there's nothing right now I can look at a dashboard and say like, oh yeah, we can crank this channel up and we'll do very well. LinkedIn is getting there for sure. Like LinkedIn now is producing definitely a good amount of leads, but yeah, up until then, I wouldn't say I had something nailed if I was you personally.
And on the LinkedIn, is that from kind of just your posts? Are you doing outbound on LinkedIn? Is it your team reaching out to people? What way is that working?
Yeah, so we have a bit of everything going on. So we've got my profile, basically just posting. I have two copywriters that help out. One copywriter is directly on my profile, and I have another content person, like other stuff, which is just like marketing, lead mags, etc. So I've got my profile, and then after I'm trying to get also the rest of the team, because well, I forget the rest of the team. We've got more people posting. Pretty simple equation, right? More coverage. So that's what I'm trying to do there on LinkedIn. And then we've also got, though for sure, we have a JTM engineer, if you want to call it like a fancy title for outbound guy. He has a lot of workflows, which we have, which we like take a LinkedIn post we did, like a lead max, and then we put that lead max inside the system. It gets scraped, and we reach out to those people, etc. So we have a system, like our kind of like marketing program is like do as much inbound as possible, and after we're trying to work those leads as much as possible, thanks to all these systems. So we have quite a few workflows for like different purposes, in other words.
Awesome. Yeah. I love that. I don't know if you know the company Client Boost. So client with a K. I think it's Client Boost.
Yeah, they're quite big.
The CEO, he posts a lot about how he basically awards his teams with basically building a personal brand and posting on LinkedIn. So they've had like big clients come in from like their team's LinkedIn, and the whole, I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll try and find the post and send it to you, but it's so cool the way that he like tiers everything. It's basically like a bonus system, but just for like people doing and getting inbound clients. It's really, really cool.
Well, I haven't managed to give like an employee kind of program, but what I've basically given is a very simple incentive. Any customer comes through your personal brand, you get 10% cut basically. So if it's a $5,000 retainer, you get $500. Very simple, tied to revenue that way. And so for example, I've got a few customer team members right now. They have like 2 deals pending, which came from their personal brand. So they'll get like $500 or $700. Like it's not a small amount of money, right? Like if you get just one lead, like it's kind of like, pays for itself.
Awesome. I love that. Okay, let's move on to kind of the talent and hiring. And, I've messaged you loads about this before, about your careers page. So, I'm on 100 calls with companies that are looking to hire, and we go onto their careers page just to do a bit of research before. And it could be the most dull thing that you've ever seen. It could just be like, we want the best, and like, a mission statement or whatever. But when you go onto yours, so we call it EVP, employer value proposition. So if you go onto yours, you've got like a video sales letter, you've got videos from the rest of the team talking about like what it's like to work at Scalerrs. You go into so much detail. And I messaged you the first time I seen it, and I was like, dude, this is one of the best careers pages that I've seen. But let's just dig into that a bit more, because again, I say to the clients that we sign, if you took as much effort into your talent acquisition, or sorry, not your talent, your client acquisition strategy into your EVP, that you'd have people knocking on the door ready to go. So let's dive into that. Why have you got like a 7 to 8 minute VSL, and why have you put so much effort into this?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess the first part of the question, right, is the most important, is like why in the first place? Because I think, I don't know if most agencies owners really realize this, but like you're in the people business, and like our service quality is a direct reflection of the quality of our team. You can only go so far in terms of operation, etc., because people do the rest, right? So it's like the quality of the people on your team is a direct reflection of the quality of you to execute for the team, for your clients, both in terms of the results, but also the experience, because there's people in contact with your customers working day in and day out. And it's like those individuals in terms of their ability to get results and their friendliness, their likeliness in terms of how enjoyable they are to work with. So first of all, it's like, if you're in the agency business, you're in the people game. And it's like, so it's like a key part in terms of like, you have to have team members which are good and fun and talented to actually work and improve the quality of the service which we're offering. So that's the why, in terms of why in the first place would I put so effort basically into it. The next thing is very simple, just math, in terms of like, well, if your business is growing and you're getting leads, well, then you need team members to fulfill those leads. So it's like, as a business, you have 2 funnels. You got one funnel to get leads, you got another funnel to get customers, right? Which Alex Mosey, for example, talks about, as you know, probably quite a bit. So very simply is like, well, if we want to attract cool people would have to have a good reason to come and join us, right? So very simply says, like, how can I put more effort into this in terms of like the cool people to come across and say, hey, these guys are cool, these guys are fun. And I just said to myself, hey, what questions would you ask yourself if you're trying to join? And I was saying, well, you care about what are the values in terms of how they're going to operate internally, what benefits they have in terms of like remote work, who am I going to work with? So that's why I put the testimonials in terms of like, you care about, right? Like, am I going to work with people who are toxic, or are they fun, or whatever? Like, you have these questions in your mind. And in like founder leadership, you want to get a feeling of like, hey, if I come into this team and I ask ideas, are they going to get pushed across the board, or are they just going to go into thin air? Am I going to be valued? Whatever it is, like, I'm actually going to have an impact in what I do. So I just asked myself all those questions and said, hey, I'm just going to put this on this page. And that way people got the best possible idea of what they could have when they join us, basically.
I love that. And again, like, you've gone into so much detail on it. And again, from our side, what we kind of look at is like quite standard, but like, for instance, the amount of calls that we get on, and we're like, we just do a few deep dive questions of like what the role is going to entail. And they're like, they don't really know what they want. So like, what we do is we build out like a job scorecard. We go into the actual mission of the role, the actual role overview. But again, having like 4 or 5 actual key outcomes or objectives for this role. And again, if you like, literally like if you spend a bit of time putting this together, then you can put together like a 90-day success plan of the onboarding of like, right, this is what their job scorecard is. Now that you've come in, this is what the first 90 days is. And again, it's the exact same way as like bringing on a new client. It's like you're promising this or whatever. Exactly. And I feel like if anybody put in as much effort as you guys are, like, yeah, it's just it's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Definitely. I'd say definitely still an area we can still do much better on. I think, like, as you said, it's like in hindsight, like while we do put effort on the onboarding, I think there's even more we can put effort. Like right now, like there's quite a few knowledge gaps in terms of processes, but you're trying to make that person feel like as, welcomed and like in the right place as possible, right? So 100%, it should be just as important as a customer, basically. Like I fully agree. Yeah.
Quick pause. If you're getting value from this conversation about scaling agencies and hiring top talent, I want to share something that might help you. Are you struggling to find A players for your digital marketing agency? We've got you covered. For SEO experts who turn rankings into revenue, head to SEOforhire.co. For paid media specialists who boost your bottom line, check out paidmediajobs.com. And if you're looking for foot rubs, you're definitely in the wrong podcast. All right, let's jump back into the episode.
Awesome. And Jules, you guys are hiring a lot at the minute. I've had agency owners on here that are doing 50 million a year. And every time we come to this question where it's like, what hiring mistakes have you made and how do you prevent them from happening? Everybody's kind of gone into, look, it's part of the nature of it. We're going to make them. But from what you've learned so far in your 3 years at Scalerrs, what hiring mistakes have you made and what preventions have you put in place?
Okay, great questions. It's definitely one I would say I still got a lot to learn personally on hiring. So it's an interesting one because I think it's such a key skill and it's actually quite a complex skill as well. As much as people would like to dumb it down, it's a very complex skill in hindsight. Like I think in hindsight, there's also quite a bit of like foresight into the person, into the individual, in terms of saying to myself, like, okay, who is this person? What do they truly care about? What are their wants? Why are they actually here on this call? What do they actually care about? And there's lots of different signals, which you can basically kind of apply the same way. I hate to use this application, but like if you were dating, I guess it's a little bit similar as well. You would look for different green flags, red flags, but like I'm guessing for hiring is relatively similar, like because there's a relatively big commitment of getting someone to the team. And it does have quite a bit of impact. I would say one thing though, which I have learned, which I'll talk about hiring mistakes, and I'll talk about some green flags, etc. just after. One lesson I have learned is that you can get yourself wrong and you can still do pretty well, in the sense of like, if you've never hired, let's say, I don't know, someone starting out, and let's say my example, I never hired, for example, a head of SEO, and I didn't have much context in terms of what did that person actually look like. I failed, but I got more context in terms of what that person should actually look like. So it means you can fail and you can still basically learn from that mistake, and it's not the end of the world. And I think like that's one element which is good to note, that you can make mistakes, and at the same time, you can definitely bounce back because you gain more context. But in terms of like hiring mistakes, what have I done? I've definitely hired with the mistake of saying to myself, but mindset is everything, because mindset is definitely a big portion, but you can't have a great mindset and have expectations this person will get to where you want them to get if there's a huge gap in between, because not everyone is the same in terms of how quickly they progress. So what I'm trying to say is that if you expect someone to be at level 10 and they've got the great mindset because they progress through levels very quickly, and you know that, but they're starting at level 2 and you want them to be at level 10 in 2-3 months, don't hire them at level 2, because that's too long in a way. So they might be the right person, but for later on. So that's one mistake which I've made there. Another mistake I've also made, I think personally, and it's an interesting because it ties back to the first one, is that I prefer now to hire people with a level 5, 6 if you want to, but with the best mindset, because they will get to level 10 relatively soon, but they will get to level 15 though very quickly after, because they have this, actually we talked about this actually a few months ago, this kind of like the ability to learn and like how quickly they compound learnings through time. So that's one area I have changed a little bit my hiring strategy, in terms of saying to myself, well, I would prefer someone who's definitely got skills, not got all the skills, but a really good learner, and he's going to continue to learn because he'll outpace the person who's just going to stick at this level here for a long time, even though it's the level you need. So that's one element. Another hiring mistake which I have made, I made quite a few for sure, definitely. Oh yeah, this sounds stupid, it sounds silly, but people would tell you like, oh, if you spot a red flag on an application or a CV, like a very simple one, just instantly disregard that. And they're actually right, because I, for example, made a hire on a junior. I remember it was a very simple one, but like he didn't respect the Loom video. He put the Loom video, like a Loom video he'd done like a few weeks ago, and he put that one as like an application. But what was the problem with that junior later on? The problem is that he didn't respect tasks. So it could have been a thing, you see, if I'd have spotted that initially and just paid attention to my gut, I would have actually sorted. So I would say like those are like some errors in terms of like hiring, which I've probably made. So it's like, yeah, it's a combination of all them. yeah, I think we're on a bit of a rant there, but like, yeah, is that helpful?
Yeah, no, that's great. And again, I feel like we're talking about Alex Hormozi a lot, but I watched a video from him the other day, and it was like him talking about, you know, when he made his first 50K hire, he was like, wow, this is amazing. His first 6-figure hire, it was like, this is crazy. And then he went from like 250 to 500 to $1 million to multi-million hire. And then his president basically gave him the advice that your best hires are in the future. And you just need to be constantly like outpacing yourself to do that. Which I thought was super interesting. But again, it ties into what you said about like the levels, but hiring somebody for that mindset.
I've got an extra idea, actually. Another mistake also I made is thinking too much for people are irreplaceable. And I don't mean that in the sense of like every team member is extremely valued. But for example, one person on the team, which I'm extremely grateful to, if he's listening to this video, like I'm extremely grateful for the help he provided basically and what he got us. But it was our first Reddit hire. And I said to myself, oh, this skill is very hard. It's very hard to find. But in hindsight, I got myself into a position where I was over relying on that person because they were very good at what they did. And I over relied on them. And I was a little bit worried in terms of if I left that person and after them, a lot of people internally, and I'm very generous. I'm also pretty generous with money as well. But I gave that person a lot basically. And that was a mistake of not realizing that actually most people, not in the sense that they're replaceable, but like you can find solutions. You can find solutions to kind of like replace. And like that person decided to leave and decided to do something on themselves. And I really wish them the best. But like it just shows that like after we got into the position after that, the department now has actually 2 people which are just as strong, not to say even stronger. So it just shows that sometimes don't feel too doomed, but like actually this person here has all the keys in their pocket, because in hindsight, like there's some great people, like that might be a great person. There's also more great people out there as well. So that's also one hiring mistake I've made as well, I'd say. That one.
Perfect. And Jules, when it comes to interviews, is there any things that, so for instance, like Carrie Rose has a thing, if she's interviewing somebody and asks at the end, have you got any questions? And they say no, she doesn't hire them because she wants curiosity.
Yeah, me
too. So for you guys, for Scalerrs, especially because you guys are scaling so aggressively, is there any like complete red flags in that interview process?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many red flags. To be very frank, I think I spot the most red flags, for example, on the application process. So like, you know, there's loads, for example, like a simple one. You don't title your Loom video properly, which you sent through to me, instant red flag. You didn't put effort just to put title your Loom video. It's a very simple one. Like that one, I didn't care. And that's, I sound a little bit brutal, but it's true. It's like, why, you know? Another one is like, if you just write a few short bullet points for your application process, that's also a bit of a red flag. It's like, there's no need. Unfortunately, there's one question I think which is pretty interesting, which I asked applicants, is like, where do you learn from in terms of like what are the types of information you like to learn? So if someone starts saying like Matt Diggity and Corey and like Charles Flo, or like some niche industry newsletters like Kevin Indig, etc. Me as an SEO agency, like those are thought leaders inside of my space. I know that person is actually invested into their own SEO learning, etc. And that's probably going to be a good person. If they start, no offense, they say like Neil Patel or something, I'm like, okay, not got the best SEO knowledge. So there's some red flags in terms of like what their motivations are in terms of what they're doing there, for example. And I would say as well, like, yeah, that one by Carrie Rose, like that's a dead no for sure. Like you want to know, has that person invested in terms of like learning about Scalerrs, about you as a brand? And I think I would say like, I guess she's put it as a red flag. I'd put it as a green flag in terms of if someone is coming to you as a company in terms of like, hey, I saw you guys Scalerrs because you guys are doing so many cool stuff, and like I want to be part of this team. Like you guys are no nonsense, no corporate BS and etc. Like, all right, cool. That person's bought into us as a company, and they've self-filtered themselves out, and it's like that person's going to blend in really easily. So that's for me like a green flag to look out for as well, like that.
Yeah. 100%. We just hired a growth marketing specialist there start of January, Jake. And it was actually Darius, my head of recruitment, that was doing all the hiring for it, whatever. There's people that were messaging me. I wasn't really like replying to them because I wasn't doing the hiring. Darius was doing the headhunting. And Jake messaged me, and it was this big paragraph. He was like, I don't know if I'm too late for interviews or whatever. Just seen one of your posts. So I've been following you for the last X, Y, and Z. I want to be involved. And like he actually had things that were like, that made sense to like follow us in the last like few years. I was like, right, send him off to Darius, and now he's with us. So again, backing on your point, I feel like if you just do the smallest bit of research, like it shows so much respect to, especially the founder if they're on with you. Like,
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's interesting as well. Is like, it's funny that person came through late in the process. I haven't had too many options where they have come late in the process. I've had one or two like really good options. One interesting thing is I've also found is that as a rule, in the 80-20, the best people are the very first to apply. I don't know if you found that one yourself. I've always found the best people are usually the ones who apply the first. I don't know why. I've always felt they're the ones on the ball the most, but I guess it depends what type of hiring strategy you have. Is it outbound? Is it, when it's an inbound post, etc.? I've always found the ones that reply the first are usually the ones I usually hire because they're always the ones like quickly to reply. Oh yeah, I saw the opportunity. I was looking out for this one, etc. And if you want to, I know a little quick one as well, but like the best people as well, I found are three examples. They had pinned our careers page in their bookmarks and they're waiting for for like a role to open. And like as soon as it opened, they were straight on it basically. So like that's also been a signal for me as well. So like, yeah, those are the easy ones, right?
Yeah, definitely speedy communication is a massive one for us. And especially a lot of our clients will, when we're onboarding with them, they'll be like, right, like we're going to give let's say the candidate 72 hours. And if they don't reply within then, or they could even be stricter 48 hours. So we have to like tell the candidate that in advance. But yeah, I think speed is a massive thing, especially through interview processes.
I was actually going to say that's actually a really good one. That's a huge green flag. It's like, yeah, how quickly they get back to you on like small little messages on LinkedIn, etc. If they're taking days, that's not a good sign. That's probably going to mean they're going to be a little bit sluggish also internally. And yeah, 100%. That's a small one, but they've got one I've got wrong also, full transparency.
Perfect. And yeah, I feel like we could talk about hiring all day, but let's move on to a few more things. So I've seen on your LinkedIn, you guys, you're really, really honest all about finances, and you're very, like, if anybody doesn't follow Jules, like your LinkedIn's blowing up at the minute because you're super honest, and your Twitter's a bit too honest, I think. but Jules, at what point does growth at all costs? You're scaling really, really fast. Need to stop so profitability can catch up, or have you been able to manage that the right way?
Okay, well, this is a great question. So it's a question I've been thinking about more recently myself across the last year, I'd say. So I was asking myself this question of like, why do most companies die in year 3 to 5, for example? So most companies die in years 3 to 5, not because actually the business is not working usually, often just because the founder gives up in terms of like, he's no longer wants to push the business forwards and he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something else. And like, that's it. I'm throwing the towel. That's the most reason businesses give up, right? Because in hindsight, as long as you've got some money to pay the founder, the business can go on forever, right? So to be very honest, I pushed very heavily. I was growing, but I was like, I'm working a ton here. There is still so much to do. And I was like, if this got any chance of doing anything good, I was like, it's got to change basically. And I like one advice, which a friend told me, actually talking about Carrie Rose. He said like, oh, Carrie Rose, she's doing really well. She's too big to fall, he said. And I was like, that's a great. It's like, yeah, she's too big to fall in the sense of like, at a certain point, if the business has a few core fundamental functions in terms of like, well, growth is on track. You got people making sure marketing is always coming through. You got people on track for making fulfillment is always dialed in. So it's like, I always say to myself, well, okay, I don't want to be behind my laptop 10 hours a day like I'm doing, trying to fix every single problem. So it's like, either I give this a shot and it actually works. If not, it's going to be probably a smaller death down the road, which I don't really want, right? And I have a team to look after, and I'm accountable to them, right? So I had this kind of like philosophy internally. I was like, okay, well, we've got two solutions. We could grow slower, which is definitely an option. I think probably an option which we could do right now, probably because we have quite a few stuff happening. Or at the same time, I said to myself in that last year, I was like, well, I see it more from the perspective as like, we either give it our all right now. I obviously didn't say this to the team, but like in my mind, it was like, we give her our all and like, we just go all in and we have a chance of getting out and we actually make something of ourselves. And I think now we're getting there because now we're starting to work. Like we just, for example, pitched like this week. I was really, really proud about this. I told the team, but we pitched like 3 unicorns, for example. And I was like crazy. And I was like, wow, these are like companies which you probably know of as well. And I was like, wow, we're pitching these companies now. So like once we start getting into like those customer bases and like the team has the possibility to work those types of customers, we have like maybe like a manager level, we've got growth team, etc. It's like, all right, if I take a day off, like this whole thing doesn't just crumble basically. And it's it sounds a little bit like just a little bit extreme from that perspective, but it's true. And I think like usually that's what happens usually in year 3 to 5. So it was more of a question turning saying to myself, like, okay, the biggest risk here is basically me saying like, you know what, I'm not cut out for working this much. And I think that's the discussion I had internally. So growth at all cost. And I personally will stick behind this because I personally think that like in your early stage of starting a company, be very honest, it's I don't want to glamorize. I think more people glamorize what it actually is to start a company. I definitely it's a very rewarding thing, etc. But definitely, like, if you think it's easy, I think people very vastly underestimate the work it actually takes. And it's like this chance of it actually succeeding and lasting for a long time, but very, very, very slim. So it's like you either run very, very quick for a long time, and like all the more you can run quickly and grow quickly and then get yourself into a spot you can start. All right, I'm just going to walk for a while, or you run at a relatively strong pace for quite longer. So I was more the perspective, like, I don't like walking I don't like running kind of like at medium pace. I prefer just to sprint. And then after I'll start walking a bit slower. So I guess that's your mindset. It depends in terms of who you are as an entrepreneur, as a founder, if you want to say, but, yeah, I guess it just depends in terms of how much you actually want to give and like into which perspective. And I was more of that mindset of like, I don't think I can run at a medium pace for a very long time. I would prefer to sprint here for a while and then after try and run at a medium pace. That was my perspective. See where I'm coming from?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I actually resonate with that as well. And I think we're lucky as well because we're quite young, don't have massive responsibilities. So for us, again, it might be different to you, but for me, it's a learning game. I always said that, I can't remember where I heard it. It's like 20s are for learning, 30s are for earning. Luckily, we're able to do a bit of both. But I feel like for us, we're quite lucky that we don't have massive bills, responsibilities, and everything else.
I don't know how people do it, for full transparency. I think that's like next level. When I see like, I don't know, different founders who have like kids and stuff, I'm like, my gosh, how do you do it? Like, honestly, like, wow.
Yeah. And so again, we've talked about this before. I don't know if you're still doing it, but a few weeks ago, you were still doing 70-hour weeks and a gazillion calls. So, that's not sustainable. And I think you know that, even though you're trying to sprint. But what are you doing to try and buy back your time?
Okay, well, it's a good question. So here are my thoughts. I am unfortunately still doing that right now. I am trying to indeed try and buy back my time. But here's the thought process is that a sign that you are progressing, as much as you might not like it, but is actually that you're getting more meetings on your calendar. Because in hindsight, more meetings on your calendar, I'm talking about discoveries, I'm talking about with the team, managing. I'm not saying like everything has to be done in the meeting, but technically speaking is like my role has a lot more evolved into giving people directions and unbottlenecking them basically, but like identifying that on a call, aligning like, okay, what's the plan for the month? What's our marketing activities? What do I need to get you guys? What we're working on? Okay, sweet. But like, there's a lot of those calls in terms of alignment with different team members. So I have a lot of, you can say like people roll under me, which is a problem right now, but still like I have a lot of calls in the sign of like, I look after more people because those people usually help out of a lot of the work and I help out of direction, etc. So that unfortunately is a sign, but still you're leveling up as a founder because you are more in those types of activities. But at the same time, 100%, I am in a lot of calls that I shouldn't be. And that's a lot of the customer work because of the size and currently roughly where we're at. So what am I trying to do to buy up my time? Well, I try and analyze. We have like this little board, which is actually everyone has access to this board. It's like inside our operations kind of like system. It's like constraints. And like one of the biggest constraints is like I'm heavily involved in client work. So the biggest area I'm trying to buy back my time is the simplest one, but it's just like client work. I can't help out as much on growth. I can't help out as much on operations if I'm so heavily involved in client work. So I'm trying to little by little basically have someone who I fully trust to be able to like truly look after the client work delivery because we have like 30 customers. So yeah, it might sound like the most basic thing, but like that is roughly like right now where I need to buy back my time.
Awesome. And yeah, I guess my last question for you, Jules, is what does the next year look like for you?
Okay, yeah, great question. So I would say hopefully less of 70-hour work weeks. No, but like I would say it's like I've been asking myself that question as well. And I would say the perspective is that in this idea here, like trying to buy back my time, etc. I'm trying to buy that time on the areas where it's simplest to kind of buy back. So the hardest one I found to buy back right now has been on client delivery, even though it's the most needed. So what I'm trying to identify all the different areas basically which I need to kind of like buy back and kind of give off responsibility. So there's a few roles basically right now which are kind of outlined for me. So we have a head of delivery, which is kind of outlined. We have a head of operations also, which is outlined. We have a few other senior members also, which we need to have just for the size basically of the agency. We want to get into a spot of like firing a few customers, like firing our lower tier customers, and basically keeping a smaller number of seniors internally and juniors to be able to execute basically that workload. But there's a few functions need to be built out. So there's the head of delivery. There might even be 2 heads in terms of like on maybe, because we have like a few different service lines, right? We have content, we have Reddit, we have SEO. So that might be too much responsibility for one person. I'm also thinking we have operations also, which goes through me too much. So I'm trying to build out this year those specific functions so that I'm no longer the bottleneck for actually taking decisions. And I want to move myself more into a position where I can jump into different functions, jump into the SEO team, say like, hey, okay, this is what we're doing from like a service perspective. How about we start doing workshops with customers and like doing these different levels here? How about we present these upsell opportunities? How about we improve this in our reporting? So like trying to basically like bring my best brains, my best kind of like inputs to the teams to kind of like level up that, or maybe like jump back into growth. Say, hey, how can we level up here? So what I want to find basically myself this year is a bit more structure in terms of like other people relying on taking responsibility of like key stuff so it can actually run itself, and also me having the ability to do more work, which I find truly fulfilling, which is definitely I as much as I'm in the SEO business, I'm not really passionate about SEO, to be very truthful. Like I'm passionate about the business building in terms of like systems, in terms of like how we're doing growth, etc. So I think also like as a founder, etc., you got to prioritize what you find the most enjoyment out of. So trying to get back into that spot, because it has been true, but I've found less enjoyment recently in what I've been doing, just because it's been so heavy on the client involvement, but also the sheer scale of what I've been doing. But that's the main thing. Try and get back into the spot where like, I know you're quite big on energy and just enjoyment. So that's the focus for now, in other words.
Awesome. I love that. And you mentioned the firing the bottom, some of your bottom of the tier customers. I think it was Nick Eubanks that talked about, I don't know if it's every quarter or if it's every 6 months, he takes the bottom 5% and cuts them. And then he has a thing called asshole tax. I don't know if you've heard of that, but those customers that like are just a nightmare to work with, he'll just message them, basically say, look, we're about to double our prices. And, if they say no, then great, that's the asshole tax. But if they say yes, then it's like, you just suck it up. Like they're paying double the prices.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I think actually I heard that one. I want to apply that for sure. Yeah, I love that one. Asshole. I have the asshole tax on the initial proposal as well. I have that usually, just in case, just to like really scare them away. Just like, yeah. Awesome. But I agree with that one.
Sure. Well, Jules, thank you so much for coming on. Anybody that's listening, there'll be links in to follow you, but where can people find you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, follow me on LinkedIn. I'm definitely quite available over there. I have got Twitter, as Josh said, maybe less filtered content and a little bit more less SEO heavy. But yeah, I got it, just a journal on Twitter, to be very frank. But like, hit me up on LinkedIn, and then if not, if you find my email, if you got something interesting, you can find it through some type of tool. But if not, yeah, LinkedIn's the best place.
Awesome. Thanks, Jules.
Thanks for sticking around to the end, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're an agency owner that is wanting to scale and wants to continue bringing your business to new heights and doesn't want to put everything on pause for hiring and finding the best talent that's out there in SEO and paid media, well, that's something I can help with. I own a recruitment company that has specialized in both the SEO and paid media sector, and we work with 100+ businesses. So I'm going to leave 2 links below. There's no big pitch here, but if you want to talk over strategy and hiring and how myself and my team can find you the best A-player talent in both the SEO and paid media sector, then please book in, and I look forward to talking to you. Thank you.